Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Misty, and I'm going to go over some of our meeting norms before we get started. Members must speak when called on for roll call or any voting. Reminder to stay focused on the topic agenda at hand for the sake of time. Remember additional feedback is provided through the meeting exit slip. The secretary will take notes, and I will store and manage the documents. The meeting is being recorded. And now we'll turn it over to Miss Greta Hilton for our welcome.
Good morning, and thanks, Misty. And thank you for allowing me to be here for just a few minutes with you guys. I just wanted to say welcome, and I hope everybody is staying safe and warm in this winter storm. Apparently, I saw a little bit of weather this morning, and I saw anywhere from 4 inches to 7 inches coming this weekend. So snow lovers, I'm sure are living their very best life. And the rest of us are kind of over it already. So, yeah, so what a way to get it started. But it's good that we're virtual and everyone is able to hopefully stay safe and warm. And so I'll stop there. I just wanted to say hello and I'll turn it over, I think, to Kathy is next up on the agenda. So again, thank you for allowing me to join.
Yes, thank you so much, Greta. So I'll just open the meeting by, again, welcoming everybody here this morning. Really appreciate my colleague, Misty. She's such a great person to work with. And I'll just read the meeting purpose really quick here. And then we'll get started with our introductions and roll call by Dr. Roberts. So the purpose of our meeting today is to create and attach, well, I'll just read it from the purpose from the regulation. The State Advisory Council for Gifted and Talented Education is hereby created and attached to the Kentucky Department of Education. The Council's purpose is to make recommendations regarding the provisions of services for gifted and talented students in Kentucky's education system. So Dr. Roberts, I'll turn it over to you and to Lindsay for the members and roll call.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that we're up and running. I want to welcome a couple of new people to the council, and we will now call roll. Carrie Ballinger, Shandidra Bradford, Kimberly Code.
Here.
Brandy Corbin.
Here.
Pauline Covington.
Here.
Mason Dyer.
Here.
Hannah England. I think she's trying. Luann Flanagan.
Here.
Kirk Haynes. Jessica Hastings.
Here.
Philip Cash. Jean Lee.
Here.
Tiffany Marshall. Brenda Martin. Julia Roberts here. Timothy Travis. And Walsh Trinity.
Here.
So do we have a quorum?
You count real quick, Dr. Roberts. Oh, and Lindsay Burton, you need to call her.
Oh, didn't mean to skip over you, Lindsay. Lindsay Burton. Here. Yes.
Yes, we have a quorum. We have 10 people who are voting members, and then Trinity Walsh is here. She's a non-voting member, but so glad to have you here today, Trinity.
Absolutely. So we are happy to welcome you, and I'll turn it over to you, Lindsay, with minutes. Because we did not have a quorum, we have a backlog of minutes.
Yes, I believe that Misty emailed out the last couple sets of minutes, and we just need to look those over and see if there's anything that needs to be changed and then approve them.
And I am assuming people have looked at them prior to our meeting. And if so, is there a motion for approving the minutes of February 2024?
So moved.
And a second?
This is Jessica Hastings, and I second.
Are there any additions or changes? And if not, all those who approve, raise your right hand or say yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, who made the initial motion?
Kimberly Code.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm typing notes and going
No
back and
worries.
forth so I can see who it was.
So now let's look at the minutes for the April 24 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Randy Corbin, I'll motion.
Thank you. A second
Snyder, I'll second.
and a second. Any suggestions or changes, edits? All those in favor say yes.
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 So both sets of motions have been approved. This is good. It's moving on from last year. The next item on the agenda is the election of officers for the coming year. And this too was postponed for lack of a quorum. So let me read what has been provided to me. The chair asks for nominations for a chair. Members may nominate themselves or others. No second is required. When nominations are made, a motion to close nominations can be made. This motion requires a second to pass. And then the secretary will chart the responses. Is there a nomination for chair? Well, I think we need a chair. So is there a nomination to be made?
This is Pauline Covington. I nominate Dr. Roberts for chair.
Thank you, Pauline.
This
Is there another nomination? Is there a motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
And that requires a second.
Jean Lee, second.
And at this point, I think we'll call the roll with a yes or no vote. And Missy, if that is not correct, please correct me.
That is correct.
Okay. So, yes or no? Carrie Ballinger? And I don't have who's marked here and not on mine. Shanditra Bradford? Lindsay Burton?
Yes, sorry.
Kimberly Code?
Yes.
Randy Corbin?
Yes.
Pauline Covington?
Yes.
Mason Dyer?
Yes.
Hannah England? Luann Flanagan?
Yes.
Excuse me, this is Misty. Hannah just voted in the chat. She's unable to speak verbally, so Hannah's vote was a yes.
Thank you. Jessica Green? Kirk Haynes? Jessica Hastings?
Yes.
Philip Cash? Jean Lee?
Yes.
Tiffany Marshall, Brenda Martin, Timothy Travis, and I believe that completes a list of voting members. And so I guess I was elected chair of the group. Thank you. Let's work hard on this together. Secondly, we need a vice chair, and I'm going to read what's expected, which is exactly what we had before. We need nominations for vice chair. Members may nominate themselves or others. No second is required. When nominations are made, a motion to close nominations can be made, and the motion requires a second to pass, and the secretary will chart the responses. Is there a nomination for vice chair? I'm sure there is. Who is the nomination for vice chair?
Okay, so I will give you all a call back on that then. We'll go off on the side.
Wouldn't it be nice to be sitting across from each other and be looking at each other as we talk today? A nomination for vice chair.
This is Jean Lee. I nominate Hannah England.
Thank you. Hannah has been nominated and it needs no second. Are there other nominations for vice chair? A motion to close the nomination?
Pauline Covington, motion to close the nomination.
And a second to that motion?
Second, Luann Flanagan.
And I will call roll again and ask you to say yes or no to Hannah England as vice chair. I believe those are my directions. Carrie Ballinger, Shondidra Radford, Lindsay Burton,
Yes.
Kimberly Code,
Yes.
Brandy Corbin,
Yes.
Pauline Covington,
Yes.
Mason Dyer,
Yes.
Hannah England. It's okay to pass you by. Luann Flanagan,
Yes.
Jessica Green, Kirk Haynes, Jessica Hastings,
Yes.
Philip Cash, Jean Lee,
Yes.
Tiffany Marshall, Brenda Martin, Timothy Travis. And I believe that concludes, and we have all yeses. Congratulations, Hannah. So for a third nomination, the specifications remain the same. I will ask for nominations for a secretary. Members may nominate them or others. No second is required. When nominations are made, a motion to close nominations can be made, and the motion requires a second to pass. Okay? Who are the nominees for secretary of the advisory council?
This is Pauline Covington. If she so is willing, I would like to nominate Lindsay Burton.
Are you willing, Lindsay? I see a smile. So
I'm sorry, I was note taking. Yes, yes, I'm willing.
Okay. Is there another nomination for secretary? Is there a motion to close nominations?
Jean Lee, motion to close nominations.
A second?
Pauline Covington, second.
And all those in favor of closing the nominations say yes.
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 So
Yes.
I shall call the roll one more time. And this is a yes or no for Lindsay Burton as secretary, just to make sure we know what we're voting on. Carrie Ballinger, Shantidra Bradford, Lindsay Burton,
Yes.
Kimberly Code,
Yes.
Brandy Corbin,
Yes.
Pauline Covington,
Yes.
Mason Dyer,
Yes.
Hannah England. I bet she's online voting. Luann Flanagan,
Yes.
Jessica Green, Kirk Haynes, Jessica Hastings,
Yes.
Philip Cash, Jean Lee,
Yes.
Tiffany Marshall, Brenda Martin, Timothy Travis. You have been elected, Lindsay, to
Thank you.
continue on as secretary. So we have our officers moving forward. Thank you. So the next thing on our agenda is to look at the priorities that actually were voted on previously. But let's see if we can be a little more chatty as we move on with this, because I think we're talking about very important work for the advisory council. And you all got the agenda for today, and the number one priority that we established earlier, but certainly need to put some meat on the bones for it, is to develop a formal annual budget request for increased funding. And we voted for that previously. And the current funding in the state of Kentucky for gifted education is $10 million. In your pocket or in my pocket, 10 million would be lots of money. But as we spread it out over 171 districts, it isn't as much as we need in order to make a difference for our students who are gifted and talented. So, questions that we have are what data could be collected to support requests? I think this might be the most important question that we could be asking today. We need
Dr.
all,
Roberts,
yes.
sorry to interrupt you. So before we get started with discussion, we did vote on the priorities and those have been approved,
That's
but the
correct.
recommendations have not been voted on. So I think what we need to do is we need to make a motion to accept these recommendations and then a second, and then we can have discussion and then vote on whether or not to, approve these recommendations or to have some other recommendations. Did that make any sense whatsoever?
Kind of. So Kathy, let me make sure I understand. For priority one, we have recommended examining what data should be collected to support requests and recommend an examination of multiple data sources. I mean, is this what you think we're voting on now?
Well, we can make a motion to accept these, and well, then we'll need a second it, and then we can have discussion, and then we can either modify these and have some other statements if you wish, and then we can vote on whichever whatever recommendations the council would like to make. But these are the recommendations that we worked on last year, but didn't have the quorum to vote on.
I'm semi with you as we're doing this. We should have talked about this yesterday, Kathy. So
That's okay.
The recommendation that a council member could put to propose are the 3 bullets that we have here. Is that?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone up for that, to for these recommendations, to make that as a motion?
Colin Covington, I motion to, what is the word, the verbiage?
To accept the recommendations from priority number 1.
To accept the recommendations for priority number 1.
Thank you, Pauline. Is there a second to that motion?
Randy Corbin, I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you. So now let's discuss what we have here. The first recommendation being to look at data that could be collected. The second, to recommend an examination of multiple data sources to support budget requests. And finally, to identify data that could be collected to support priority 1, such as district caseloads. What discussion do you have?
This is Jessica Hastings. One question that I have is, what data points could we investigate that would demonstrate the relative funding of gifted and talented education to other funding for other students who are considered, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm a parent representative, so I may not use the correct designation, but other students who have similar personal education plans. And I'll be specific in saying, one question I've had on the local and the state level is, are we funded well and appropriately relative to other students who have other needs for education? I think that there may be an opportunity to educate our legislators about the importance of funding, proper level of funding for gifted education. I think that there may be a lack of awareness despite opportunities for our colleagues to advocate on our behalf in the legislature. So that's one data point that I hope we can look at. And I hope I've made myself clear.
You have made yourself clear, and I want you to know that parents are an incredibly important voice. So we value your input. Yes.
This is Jean Lee, and yeah, you made some great points, and it sounded like you were talking about comparing funding to gifted students who are considered exceptional learners to other students who are also considered exceptional learners. And I think that's an absolutely imperative point that you made. Thank you.
Other points to consider.
Dr. Roberts, this is Jean Lee again, and on that third bullet point where it says identify data that could be collected to support priority 1, and then there's an example of such as district caseloads, and I wouldn't want that example to be the only thing that was looked at, because you know, that kind of makes me think that we're tending to think of, and it's necessary, but like the more students that you have, the larger your population is, the more money that you're going to need. But it's not just based on number of students, because you will have schools and districts in other locales that are smaller. And of course, I always go to the rural aspect of it that, you know, that may have budget needs that are different from caseload. So I just want to make sure that our language doesn't limit the possibility for other types of funding other than caseload or funding need.
An important point. I would have to tell you that data seem to be incredibly important to the decision makers in Frankfurt. What other data are available?
This is Brandy Corbin. Do we have any, I guess my starting point would be, what data do we have to show that they're currently underserved? Like what everybody wants more money for their purpose. I understand that. But what data do we have that shows that they're currently underserved with the funding that is currently given to gifted and talented education?
I think there are superintendents who are very willing to speak out on being underfunded. In fact, I've got a Zoom call with one initiated by the superintendent saying that the funding is inadequate to do for gifted students what it takes in order for them to do well in school, to thrive.
And how did he come to those conclusions? Like, what was it, the number of advanced or AP tests that are available, or not being able to fund the taking of those advanced learner exams, or like what are they using to say that that particular district is underserved?
I could tell you a whole lot more after Friday afternoon.
Okay.
This is Carrie Ballinger. I'm the superintendent in Rockcastle County Schools. I think there's various data that you could use to support that argument. If you start with the amount of funding that you do receive, you could quickly do some quick calculations about how many gifted and talented students you have in your district. What is the cost of the teacher? What is the cost of any type of resources? Cost of any type of extracurricular events that are taking place to support your gifted students. It wouldn't take long to do a quick calculation to show that there's a shortage of funding. But I think it comes back to starting with the funding that you do receive, and then just showing the resources that each district is putting into gifted and talented to show that there's a shortfall.
Thank you.
And this is Pauline Covington. I'm I suppose following up on the previous questions about funding and underfunding. My question is, perhaps, or can we look at data provided by guidance counselors, for example, who cannot accommodate the requests of students who wish to enroll in AP or honors classes, or even look at the number of students that are enrolled in those classes already? Are they maybe are there too many students per teacher? Are there not enough teachers available? So maybe looking within the records of guidance counselors might be something to consider.
Thank you. Other data that you would like to suggest that could be useful?
Hi, this is Hannah. I'm thankful to get to see you all in your face now and to hear you. I apologize for that, but kind of going off of what Ms. Pauline had said, even the social emotional side of that. I know a lot of our students here, you know, we not only are they gifted, but they also have to see their counselors throughout the day. So even how many students that not only with their academic needs, but with their social emotional behavioral needs as well, to kind of support that with extra support. So that could possibly be how many referrals you may have, or how many visits that they go to see with a counselor, or how many students you would have in that twice exceptional population.
Thank you, Hannah. Vice Chair.
This is Brandy Corbin. One thing that I think would be helpful to know is how many teachers we have that are, you know, specifically trained or hold a certification for gifted and talented education in order to serve students who are identified as gifted and talented. I do think that that is one of the challenges. I know it is in my school district in Jefferson County, is we don't have a whole lot of teachers who have any kind of, you know, certification or additional accreditation to serve students who are gifted and talented. So that might be one way to, you know, gather some funding, would be to look at how do we increase the number of teachers that are certified to serve students who are gifted and talented. And, you know, that would be one source of data that we could look at to, you know, ask for additional funding to help provide opportunities for teachers to add that additional certification to their certificates, in conjunction with, you know, a partnership with a college who would be willing to allow teachers to do that.
And that is such an important thing. And Jefferson County actually does make it available for teachers at no cost to do that, in a partnership with us. And we've had some challenge having enough teachers sign up for it.
Yeah.
So maybe motivating teachers to want to get the endorsement is also important. Yeah.
Kind of like they do with the national board certification. When teachers earn that certificate, there is a financial incentive, you know, added to their pay for holding that certificate. So I don't know if that would be, you know, some way to draw maybe a different pot of money that would allow us to increase the number of teachers who are available to serve.
I like all of your ideas, and I guess when you are ready, we can vote on whether we move forward with the recommendations in this priority.
Chair Roberts, this is Jessica Hastings, and I do have another data point that I hope we can look at it.
Please.
I would say I'm curious about this, and it may or may not be relevant to the case that we would be making for more support. However, as I look on a nationwide scale, I would really be curious where Kentucky ranks relative to similar sized states and gifted education populations, to see whether it's on a per pupil or per system or just statewide look. But I would love to know if we're underfunded relative to other states. I'm going to guess we are, but just looking on a national scale, I think might be helpful. We take such pride in being Kentuckians, and if we can say we are underfunded relative to other states, then maybe that would create a compelling case to our friends in Frankfort.
I appreciate your suggestion. And we certainly can do that. The challenge with state by state looking at gifted is what is considered gifted in each state is different. Some states have quite a bit more funding and some have none. But we certainly could put that on a chart and look at it. Good idea. Haven't done that in a while.
Would, this is Jean Lee again, would it be helpful or appropriate to include data as to how many students or what percentage of gifted students in Kentucky receive free and reduced lunch, or homeless, in foster care, those types of at-risk students, if we had a number or a percentage of those, because it stands to reason that those types of students have limited access to opportunities, and it would require additional funding to provide those opportunities and services for students that are already at risk.
Another good idea. That's what we're looking for, lots of good ideas. Others to add? And I think all of you are well aware this is not a funding year for the state legislature, which is the best time for us to be talking about collecting data, so that as we would embark on the spring, and frankly, by this spring, there will be organizations making their priorities for funding. And to be a part of those priorities, we need to have our ducks in a row. Anything else to add? Well, if there is no more discussion, we have a recommendation and a second to endorse the recommendations for priority 1. And I bet this is a good time to call the roll again in order to make that vote happen. So this would be a yes or no response to supporting the recommendations for priority 1. Okay. Carrie Ballinger.
Yes, I support that.
Thank you. Shandidra Bradford. Lindsay Burton.
Yes.
Kimberly Code.
Yes.
Randy Corbin.
Yes.
Pauline Covington.
Yes.
Mason Dyer.
Yes.
Hannah England.
Yes.
Luann Flanagan.
Yes.
Jessica Green. Kirk Haynes. Jessica Hastings.
Yes.
Philip Cash. Jean Lee. Tiffany Marshall. Brenda Martin. Julia Roberts, yes. Timothy Travis. And the motion passes. So let's, and after this meeting, we'll have to think of how we collect all of those data so that we can have a compelling reason to provide data. So let's look at priority 2 as it was approved, but now we're looking at the recommendations for priority 2.
So Dr. Roberts, before we go to priority 2, this would be a recommendation for the Kentucky Department of Education to collect this data. So I've written down, your ideas of what to be looking at and I know that we have some things already currently. So what will happen is, these recommendations will be looked at by the department, and then, we'll look at how to collect the data, that type of thing. And then we'll come back to you with what data is collected and that type of thing. So
that's
y'all are making the
terrific.
recommendations to the department.
Terrific.
All right,
Thank
just
you.
to be clear. Okay. All right, priority 2.
And priority 2 on my screen has something right over the top of it. So would you read it, Kathy?
Sure, I would be glad to. So priority 2, which we already voted on, was educate teachers and parents on the identification and recommendations for students showing gifted and talented characteristics. And the recommendations to KDE were develop end-of-year report with questions focused on the following questions. How does the district gather recommendations? How does your district implement identification? How are gifted and talented resources utilized? And what questions are included in parent surveys?
Is there a motion to accept these recommendations to KDE?
This is
Motion to
Pauline
accept.
Covington.
Go ahead, Pauline.
Oh, I motion to accept the priority 2 and the recommendations to KDE.
Is there a second to the motion?
I will
Kimberly,
second it.
You'll second. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Good. So now let's discuss it. What questions do these recommendations raise? Are they good as they are? Do they need to be edited? Is there a question that should be included? Does your district use universal screening, and at what points?
This is Hannah. I do have a question, maybe for Miss Kathy. Can KDE specify per district what questions to ask on their parent survey, or is that left up to the district entirely?
That's a really good question, Hannah. As you know, the regulation is the umbrella under which the program is administered, but then it's up to the districts to decide how they go about implementing those regulations. And so I think the answer to that question would be, it would be a district decision about what kind of questions they ask on their surveys. Now, there could be guidance about that or training about that, about questions, those types of things, but ultimately it would be left up to the district.
But
Okay,
they could
thank
be
you.
made as suggestions or as just examples.
Something to that effect could
Yes.
possibly take place.
I guess my question relates to the fact that these seem pretty general questions. And although you've made it clear, Kathy, that there won't be recommendations, but there could be examples of how your district gathers recommendations. That's a big question. As does this second one, how does your district implement identification?
I guess my clarifying question would be, Hannah, I thought you were talking about like questions that the districts ask parents and guardians.
I think she was with the fourth one.
Yes.
So is this Yeah, okay. So, but is this question more to districts at the end of the year summative evaluation that they turn in? Are these questions that the council wanted KDE to include on the state report, the end of year state report? So at the end of the year, by regulation, each district has to submit an end of year summative evaluation. And there are questions on that evaluation. And we try to make that appropriate for districts to answer. We've done it in different ways over the past. Currently, it's more of a, a yes or no type of questions like what you were just asking there, Dr. Roberts, about. Does the district, I forget what your question was, I should have written it down. Does the district do something or other? And then the answers are yes or no. Just because districts have a lot on their plate, and to ask more questions that they would have to write a narrative answer could be a heavy lift for districts at the end of the year.
Actually, my question related to universal screening.
Right. So that is one of the questions that is asked.
And does it ask what is used for universal screening?
Not currently.
I might think that could be very useful, and I understand that goes beyond yes and no, but it does gather information that could help us educate others on useful ways to screen universally. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? I'll get pretty good at calling this roll. The answer is yes or no to accepting the recommendation to KDE for priority 2. Carrie Ballinger.
Yes, I vote to accept the recommendation.
Shantitra Bradford. Lindsay Burton.
Yes.
Kimberly Code. Brandy
Sorry,
Corbin.
yes.
Brandy.
Yes.
Pauline Covington.
Yes.
Mason Tyre.
Yes.
Hannah England.
Yes.
Jessica Green. Luann Flanagan.
Yes.
Kirk Haynes. Jessica Hastings. Philip Cash. Jean Lee. Tiffany Marshall.
Yes.
Brenda Martin. Julia Roberts, yes. Timothy Travis. And the motion passes. Priority 3 that has been voted on, and it is looking at this point at accepting these recommendations being made to KDE. And they read, create a task force to study the allocation of equitable funding for all districts, review the language of current regulation regarding 75% allocation to certified staff to allow for flexibility of funds to be spent on student services, financially incentivize teachers to acquire GT endorsement to combat current shortage, evaluate and develop guidelines for appropriate caseload, and require GT training for general education teachers. Wow, that's a big one. Is there a motion to accept these recommendations?
I make a motion to accept the recommendations of priority 3. This is Jean Lee.
Pauline
And
Covington, seconds.
is there discussion on these recommendations? Each one seems pretty important to me.
The last one there of requiring GT training for general education teachers aligns with the NAGC Universal Educator Preparation and Gifted Education that they put out in September. So I think that's highly pertinent.
And I do as well, Kimberly. I would tell you, I think there really is within the standards in Kentucky some requirement to do this, but I think it's basically lost in a myriad of standards. So maybe one thing that could happen with that is to pull out what does certification in the state of Kentucky have to say that might guide the education of general ed teachers. Thanks for bringing up the framing paper that NAGC released this fall on educating all teachers to be aware of and to be prepared to have gifted students in their classrooms.
That paper has some really strong arguments in it too. It's worth taking some time to read through it.
Yes, it is. I did a brief read even this morning, knowing this was part of where we were going. Any other discussion?
Hi, this is Jessica Hastings again. My daughters are in Fayette County Public Schools, and I know each district is different. However, when we're looking at caseload, do we consider students who are in primary talent pool as part of caseload? I do know that in our school district for a while, and I don't know if it's still the case, Pauline might know this, but the gifted coordinator in the elementary school level covered primary talent pool all the way through 5th grade in the case of our elementary schools, which greatly increases the caseload. And again, I don't know how much this translates across the state, but I do think that makes a compelling case for even more need to have general education opportunities for all of our educators, not just 4th grade and above.
Absolutely.
This is
Kathy.
Pauline.
Go ahead, Pauline.
Oh, Jessica, I think that is accurate about the GT coordinators being responsible for primary talent pool, at least in my example, as a teacher, as well as a parent in Fayette County.
Thanks for those comments, you guys. So just to provide some technical assistance about this question. Number one, the regulation, which is 704 KR 3:285. In section 8, it says that all, it talks about certification there, and then it talks about that all other staff who work with gifted education students should be provided professional development, to help them in working with these students. And so we have that in regulation. It's up to the district to implement that. And then to your question, Jessica, that's a good question. I think it's a district decision about primary talent pool. I think it depends on the district. The regulation, again, when it talks about, I believe it's section either 3 or 6, it may have something in each of those sections, but it talks about that primary talent pool children are generally served in the regular classroom. Going back to your question about, teachers having some training about how to work with gifted students or advanced students, high potential students. But that doesn't preclude them being able to have other services that are mentioned in section 6, like mentoring or pull out resource services, those types of things. So I think the bottom line is it would be up to the district about whether or not they had, a GT certified staff person or a staff person to to work specifically one-on-one with those students. So I hope that's helpful as y'all think about, these types of recommendations.
So Kathy, I would wonder if, and knowing that it is there, but if we could highlight that in messages that go out to districts. I'm afraid some of the time we continue to do it as we have been doing it without highlighting the fact that it's there. And let me give you a good example of that. Most of you know I teach graduate classes, and over, my very experienced teachers don't have any idea that a GSSP is an IEP under the law in Kentucky. I just think there's some things that we have in place that people have forgotten about or never knew about. And so maybe the recommendation to KDE could be that they would highlight that GT training for general ed teachers is a requirement. Just some things that we could do to kind of get people thinking about the many things that we really do have in place that are quite strong in Kentucky. But if you don't know it's there, it doesn't help you. Other suggestions with priority 3?
Hi, this is Hannah again, Dr. Roberts. I just want to follow up with your comment. And I don't guess KDE would have any jurisdiction with this, but like if to be proactive with it to ensure that all colleges and teacher prep programs had a class dedicated to gifted and talented. I don't think that's the case. Is it across the Commonwealth?
I'm doubting if it is the case any place. I think that probably what maybe little is done for gifted students in teacher ed programs is spread throughout coursework. But I've got other folks on here like Kimberly who could certainly speak to that from a different part of the state.
I agree with you. It's integrated in, but there's not a specific course.
Thanks. Sorry, that's the answer, but I think it is the answer.
That's unfortunate. That would be nice to have, and I know that could be the case, but I didn't know if there was any way that colleges could ensure that it was being discussed at some point. So I was just curious about that.
Well, I think through the attention to standards and making colleges of education aware of the fact that this framing paper was done. We're going through accreditation this spring, and you pay attention to standards. So yes, I think it's something we ought to talk about, just like we ought to highlight so many of the things that are in place for districts. But we've got to not be quiet about it. We've got to talk to decision makers. They've got to know what's in place. Otherwise, they won't do it. It's kind of like the school board policy. All districts have a school board policy on gifted ed. It was adopted so long ago that probably current superintendents and school board members may not know that. So how do we highlight for them what they are required to do? Colleges of education are very much like that as well. Other discussion on this motion? Well, then let us vote yes or no. And the yes or no is on supporting the recommendations for priority 3. Carrie Ballinger?
Yes, I support the recommendations for priority 3.
Shantitra Bradford, Lindsay Burton, Kimberly
Yes.
Code,
Yes.
Brandy Corbin,
Yes.
Pauline Covington,
Yes.
Mason Dyer,
Yes.
Hannah England,
Yes.
Luann Flanagan,
Yes.
Jessica Green, Kirk Haynes, Jessica Hastings.
Hey, Dr. Robert, excuse me.
Yes.
I think Kirk is here and Regina is working on putting him into the meeting.
Great, great. Philip Cash, Jean Lee,
Yes.
Tiffany Marshall, Brenda Martin, Julia Roberts, yes. Timothy Travis. And the motion has passed. So we have previously accepted 3 priorities, and today we have endorsed the recommendations for KDE to do the various tasks that are listed in priorities 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So I think that you're on now, Kathy, with twice exceptional students.
Yes. So at a previous meeting, I gave a short update on the characteristics and needs of twice exceptional students. That was a question or comment on the exit slip at one point. So we do look at the exit slips to see what kind of feedback that we have from our meetings. So please make sure that you complete your exit slip. But today I want to give you an update about how this information is being communicated to districts and to others. All right. So first of all, we have a Gifted and Talented Coordinator One-Stop. This is a SharePoint site for GT coordinators, GT teachers, and others who work with gifted education. It is a SharePoint site that houses recordings and PowerPoints and guidance regarding gifted education, and this also includes twice exceptional presentation and a recording there. Then next we have the KDE GT Resources webpage. This is our outward-facing KDE page, and it is kind of mainly there for parents and others because, as I said before, we have the GT Coordinator One-Stop for our GT educators and others. And so this outward-facing webpage is has a section on twice exceptional students. This section includes information about the National Association for Gifted Children. It also has information about and links to the Council for Exceptional Children, the Talented and Gifted portion of the Council for Exceptional Children. And it also has KDE presentations about twice exceptional children that are linked there. At the 2024 Directors of Special Education Institute in September this year, I had the wonderful opportunity to present information regarding identification and the serving of 2E students to the Directors of Special Education around Kentucky. Also recently in November at the Kentucky Council for Exceptional Children, I presented a session on 2E students to special education staff about this special population. We discussed similarities and differences between students with disabilities and GT students. They also learned about the 5 gifted categories and the characteristics students might display. We talked about exceptions to the criteria and the importance of the Gifted and Talented Committee when reviewing identification evidence. Also, one of my office's North Star priorities, I'm in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, and one of those North Star priorities is access for all. And in my team's conversations about identification and services, I always include information about gifted and talented students and twice exceptional students. So those are the ways that we have been communicating information about twice exceptional students. Are there any questions or comments about that? All right. Well, if not, Then we can move on over to Dr. Roberts, and Dr. Roberts is going to give us some gifted education updates.
Thank you, Kathy. I would have to tell you that 2E is probably one of the top topics in gifted ed. If you're looking at state conferences, the national conference, even the World Conference that will be held this summer, it's a topic that still we have lots of special educators who don't really get it, lots of gifted educators who don't really get it, and certainly quite a few of our regular classroom teachers are pretty unfamiliar with behaviors that would indicate twice exceptionality. So for the state CAGE conference that's coming up February 10th and 11th, I hope you'll think about people you know, fellow parents, educators, school and district leaders who need to be better educated on some topic related to children with gifts and talents. So let me highlight what the state conference will be about. The Monday sessions are mainly 2.5-hour sessions so that there'll be extra time to basically have preparation for putting whatever that topic is in practice. Although in the afternoon, we do have a couple of sessions that are hour in length, so there's a little variety to the day. Topics for the 2.5-hour sessions, artificial intelligence will be a topic both in the morning and with a different presenter in the afternoon. The basics of gifted ed is one I'll be doing. Who's new to gifted ed? What do they need to know, whether they're parents or educators? What is a foundation for really getting launched with understanding gifted ed? MTSS, the multi-tiered system of services, in some states that has been put into place with gifted in the MTSS system. And we have the coordinator of the Nebraska gifted State Department coming to work with, to share what they've done to incorporate gifted into MTSS. We had gifted into RTI, and my wish is that we will soon have MTSS also focusing on gifted kids, including gifted kids. There's a session on Infinite Campus for I think mainly coordinators. Shelby County has implemented a district plan to move to active school district gifted committees, and they'll be sharing what they've done. And please note, change doesn't happen quickly. It starts and then there are phases to the change. But as a district, they've been doing some things to involve all principals and school leaders in active involvement in gifted ed. And they're going to be doing a session. There's a session on acceleration. Contrary to what most people think, acceleration is not all about grade skipping. It's many different things, at least 20 different types of acceleration. Ed Amon is going to do a social emotional session on building resilience. And I think they're counselors as well as teachers and parents who could be very interested in what's happening with our kids who need resilience. And Justin Mitchell, Justin's always fun. On Monday, he's going to do a session. The topic is Pop Culture Meets the Boardroom, teaching gifted students to think like leaders. So for the Monday sessions, as you register for the CAGE conference, you register for specific sessions. Quite different for Tuesday, when there will be oodles of different sessions, most of which are in the 50-minute category. They are for classroom teachers, they're for gifted resource teachers, special ed teachers. Lots of people could benefit from participation in the CAGE conference that's held February 10th and 11th, a little earlier this year. And so it's time to register right now, but it's also time to let others know about the opportunities that will be provided for learning about gifted kids. And go to the CAGE website, Kentucky Association for Gifted Education, to register for the conference. Sign up for a hotel room if you are far enough away that you need a place to lay your head at night. And the two keynote speakers for the event are Bryant Howsam, well-known and gifted across the country, and our own Tracy Inman, who will close out the conference with, I'm sure, a very motivational keynote address. Any questions about the CAGE conference? Well, happening soon after the CAGE conference is the proclamation of Gifted Education Month, which will occur in the rotunda of the Capitol on February the 13th. It is a wonderful way to bring students to kind of see what happens in the making of government. Your legislators are always happy to meet with you. And so talking to students is something they do well, and it can be a wonderful educational experience. So for the month of February, which is Gifted Education Month in Kentucky, what are your plans to highlight gifted ed? Anyone ready to share something that you plan to do? Or that you could plan to do? Well, don't let the time go by. It's too good an opportunity to get people sharing their interest and willingness to support gifted ed. So that could be done with a local proclamation. Photo opportunities are always appreciated by decision makers. So if you can do something, and I'm sure we each can do something to celebrate and increase the awareness of the importance of gifted education, February is the time to do it. And if you can come to the proclamation, that's great. And the other CAGE announcement is that we are looking for an executive administrator for the Kentucky Association for Gifted Education, and applications are certainly open at this time. The World Council for Gifted and Talented Children will have its first face-to-face meeting since before the pandemic, and proposals are, the deadline is coming up the 15th of January, so that's next week. It's the end of July, July 29th to August the 2nd in Braga, Portugal. Doesn't that sound sunny and warm and nice? A perfect place to network with others. And I think you all know the international headquarters of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children is located at WKU. So it's a part of what I'm thinking about on an ongoing basis. So those are updates that we have. The National Association for Gifted Children will have its annual meeting next November in Pittsburgh. So quite a bit closer than Seattle, where it was this year. And so those are my updates. Does anyone have an update they would like to add on? I might say that I think it's pretty important to be following Commissioner Fletcher's meetings around the state. And I hope that you will attend and speak up on behalf of children who are advanced. Which I suppose brings me to one other update. There is legislation being proposed in this session that will require more advanced coursework in math, and that students will be placed in advanced coursework unless they opt out rather than opting in. And this is something that I've been interested in quite a while. North Carolina has done this for several years. Texas is doing it. Several states are doing it in order to increase the number of students who take advantage of advanced coursework. And of course, that's not only important in math, it's important in all content areas. But that probably would be the place that it would be easiest to get started. So if you're especially interested in that idea, why don't you follow up with me after this meeting, and I would be glad to talk with you about what is being proposed. I don't know of a bill number yet, but it's been presented for a bill number. Okay. Those are my updates.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. I saw Kirk's hand go up at one point. Kirk, do you still have a question or a comment? I guess not. Okay. Well, we'll go on, and we're going to be looking at future meeting dates is our next part of our meeting today. So at our last meeting, there wasn't a quorum, so we didn't vote on any meeting dates. These are the proposed meeting dates from the last meeting. February the 13th is the date for the Gifted Education Proclamation at the Capitol Rotunda in Frankfort. So we could have our meeting before that and then go over to the proclamation afterwards. This is about 5 weeks from today, so I don't know if that's too close to this meeting or what your thoughts are on that. Just wanted to make you aware of that. And then the other proposed date would be Wednesday, April the 16th. Trying to stay out of May because May is generally a very busy time for teachers and educators as far as state assessment, but we could go into May if you felt like we needed to. Also, it just kind of depends on when schools are, closing for the year, when we might meet, that type of thing. That's another reason why I kind of try to stay out of May if we can. So,
would those both be in person, or would they have virtual options?
That would be up to the council to decide whether you would like for those to be virtual or in person.
Sure, it's nice to see people.
So do we have a motion to accept these dates?
Kathy, I have a question with regard to the February date. I know it's important to get to Frankfurt to participate in the proclamation, but will we have the agenda items to justify, taking time away from work and other commitments to have that meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, what time is the proclamation scheduled for in Frankfurt on that day?
I believe
Noon.
it's scheduled. Yeah,
It's
noon.
noon.
Thank you.
So perhaps if we did that, we could schedule a room over near the capitals so that it would be real easy to be at the proclamation.
I don't know anything about that, Dr. Roberts. I only know about the rooms here at KDE. I guess that's something we could look at. We're not very far from the Capitol here, though. I don't think it takes very long to get from here to the Capitol, but that's something to think about. So is there a motion then to accept these dates?
Motion made, Luann Flanagan.
Okay. And a second?
Pauline Covington, second.
Okay. So is there any more discussion? We don't have to necessarily accept these dates. This is where the discussion comes in on whether or not we want to accept or do a different date.
So this is just for clarification. We're looking at the February 13th meeting for in-person, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, then Dr. Roberts, you can call a vote if you want to.
I think we could say all those in favor say yes.
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 And those opposed, nay. The motion passed. Okay. So I think that concludes our meeting today. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yes. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make, Dr. Roberts?
Well, my closing remarks are that I'm so glad you're here. I look forward to seeing you at the CAGE conference, at the proclamation signing, and most of all, I want you to be advocates for gifted students in any organization in which you participate. Talk with others. We need to be building up our base of support for children who are ready to learn at advanced levels. And if you look at the data within almost all of the districts, if not all of them, there is such a large percentage of our students who are not yet reaching proficient levels. And we must work with those students, but we must not lose the fact that students who are at proficiency or beyond need to be learning too. So we need advocates at school levels, district levels, the state level. So let's work on this together. And
Okay.
I wish you a warm and healthy rest of January, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the CAGE conference and the proclamation.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dr. Roberts. We've got one more thing here before we adjourn today. I'm going to pass that over to Misty Green.
Okay, this is Misty. This is just a reminder for you to please complete your exit slip that will be sent to your email soon, because we do take those questions and concerns into consideration for our next meetings. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
This is Pauline Covington. I motion to adjourn our meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All members voting to say yes.
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 Any members voting no? Okay, this meeting is adjourned and we look forward to seeing you in February. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.